What happened? Everything seems dull, gray, and fuzzy instead of the usual sharp colors. I see someone approaching me, and as the shape comes closer, I see that it is Charlotte. "Welcome, Amporn, to the afterlife," he says. "I died?" I say in response. "Yes, don't ask who killed you or why. Those are for you to figure out." Suddenly I realize something. "Are you dead, Charlotte?" "No, not yet. I can commune with spirits." All of a sudden, everything starts to turn white. "What is happening?" I ask him. "A memory of something you do not quite remember is surfacing." He tries to say something else, but my mind has already been whisked off to another place and another time. In this vision of a memory, I catch glimpses of things and feelings, and see a courtroom. The woman who seemed to be in charge of Clunin Court, my father, and I feel confused about something. But before I can figure out what I'm confused about, I'm whisked back to the present. My mind starts reeling over what I saw. I saw my dad in a courtroom, but he has told me that the only time he has gone to court was to divorce from my mother. My mother is the leader of Clunin Corp? I quickly explain what I saw in the memory and what I thought it meant. Charlotte starts to say things like, "I thought so, but I couldn't be sure," when another memory starts to appear. In this one, I feel and see the world clearly. Somebody has taken my favorite toy, and that makes me feel angry. The more angry I get, the more the air around me turns hot, until paper turns black and chars. The one who takes my toy quickly gives it back to me in fright, but the air is so hot that the toy starts to melt. As the toy dissolves, I start to feel sad, as I had just destroyed my favorite toy. And suddenly, the sky opens up, and it begins to rain. As I come back to the present, I find Charlotte pacing. He sees me and starts to try to tell me about he didn't know that my mom was Azul, but I stop him and make sure he knows not to blame himself, and ask him, "I had powers once?" "Yes, you did, but they were tied to your emotions, and you lost them right after the divorce. You might still be able to use them, as until they disappeared, they started to be used when you seemed to be calm. In fact, think about trying to set that candle over there on fire." I think about the candle bursting into flames for a moment before the candle catches fire, bringing small amounts of color into the world. "Now try to put it out," he tells me. Again, I think about it, and water falls onto the candle, and color begins to spread throughout the world, everything turning to its natural hue. "If you ever need to do something with your powers, or that you cannot do alone, clear your head, and your powers can do whatever you can think of," he says as his voice trails off, and I begin to wake up. I wake up, all of my previous wounds healed, and with a new understanding of the world, I set off. I find I was placed in the forest, right outside the ghost town, but there are now suddenly guards. I will myself to go invisible, and give myself super speed, and sure enough, it works. In a matter of seconds, I have avoided all the guards and made it back into the cavern. I quickly run around, freeing all the slaves, but they do nothing. At first I think it is because I am traveling too fast, but then I realize that they have stopped moving completely. I search around for my mom and find her, and a machine that looks like it is controlling all the people outside. I start to think about what to do when suddenly Medea appears, her face expressionless, holding a knife, and I realize the reason why none of the people outside are doing anything. The machine is keeping all the people outside frozen, as they otherwise could revolt, while the machine turns to point all of its computing power to controlling my friend. She charges towards me, but I quickly disarm her, and then knock her out with my powers. Suddenly, the machine starts to smoke as it is trying to run a program it can't access. With the machine broken down and the people freed, I start to leave, carrying Medea over my shoulder, but Azul stops me. "Why did you do this, Amporn?" she says. I keep walking to the door until she says, "I was doing this for our family." I respond with, "What? If you wanted to reunite our family, you could have come back and talked with Dad. If you—" She cuts me off. "You don't understand. I tried to talk with Imad, but he said the main reason he left me was because I dragged us down and I couldn't support anyone else. So I was trying to make things better. As long as you don't bring everyone around you down, it didn't matter to Dad what you were doing. As long as you weren't doing something to make people worried of what you were doing, he was fine, but you were doing dangerous drugs, gambling our money, and hanging around with shady characters. That's why he left you." She smiles slightly, and realization comes into her eyes as she sees that this is true. She then says, "Hold on a minute." She boots up another computer, shuts down the mind control systems, and quits, leaving a note telling the next person in charge that even though she is leaving, to keep the company going without mind control. Eventually, she says, "I'm coming with you." I tell her, "That's fine, but what's the fastest route back home?" "Closer than you might think," she replies. With that, she leads everyone up through the hatch, which deposits us back in town. For the next couple months, there are celebrations, and I impress people with my newfound powers, enough that I am suddenly one of the most popular people in school. After those months pass, the successor of power in Clunin turned out to be even worse than my mom, so when the time came for the quest against him came, people were ready. I decided not to go, but instead to protect those around from Don T.